Thank you, Laredo. Very happy to be here. Not sure I would ever call myself an expert in soccer, but I'll take it for now. Talk about the digital transformation and focus on streaming and the impact of Netflix. So the first part of my presentation will be Netflix's growth and the evolution of their business model. And then the second part of my presentation will be the impact on Disney and the other companies that Netflix is competing with today. Okay, so we all know the video market is huge and still growing. So when we focus on Netflix, I just thought it's interesting just to look at this company that is not that old, that back 5 years ago, they surpassed the number of subscribers for all of cable TV. So cable TV had been building businesses for decades, and in a very quick period of time, Netflix has passed them in terms of subscribers. And they've also passed them in terms of content. So this slide here looks back at Netflix in 2019 when they released 371 new titles. And what you see in this graph is that in 2005, all of the broadcast and cable TV companies combined only had 292 titles. So that's NBC, ABC, Fox, all of the cable TV channels as well. So Netflix, just doing something on a scale that we've never seen before. And today, with all of the competition coming in, so this is just capturing the major players in the US market right now. So you can see here in the subscribers is what I want to highlight. So Netflix having 214 million subscribers at the end of 2021. And Amazon Prime is close at 175. Disney, just a little bit more than half at 118 at the time, and everybody else just very, very small in comparison. And Laredo had mentioned film, so I think it's important just to also look at what they're doing to the film industry. So they've announced that their goal is to have 90 films a year, including films that are blockbusters of $200 million production budgets or more. So just to give a sense, this year the major studios in the US have announced 71 films to be released theatrically. So Netflix has said that they're going to do 70 this year. So they will be on par with all of the major studios combined. And if we think that that's a disruption due to COVID, which it is, I'm also showing here that there were 179 films released prior to COVID. So if Netflix is doing 90, they're going to have half the output of all of the other major studios combined, assuming things come back to normal, which they probably won't, unfortunately. So the ratings, according to Netflix, are impressive. These are ratings that they provided. So 80 million households watching Bird Box. In fact, if you watched Bird Box in the first 2 weeks that it was released, according to Netflix, that would be the equivalent of a $400 million 2-week opening, which is huge. So these kinds of metrics on viewing, very, very impressive. Netflix is trying to change the metric from number of households to hours of engagement. So we'll see how that goes over time, but it's clearly a huge number, 10% of all viewing time in the US. But in order to keep that engine going, they are spending an enormous amount of money on content. Okay, so if you look carefully at this chart, I apologize, it's a little hard to read, but you see Netflix is in third position here. They're expected to spend about $20 billion this year, so this is looking at 2021, where they spent about $18 billion. And the important thing to note is, like if I compare them to Disney, Disney's a little bit different since they have the Star Wars franchise and the Pixar and Marvel Universe franchises. So they're spending quite a bit of money. But let's look at NBCU, which is right next to Netflix and Warner Media. So NBCU, that $18 billion you see here, which is on par with Netflix, includes all of the spending on sports content. So their NFL contract and the Olympics contract. So without sports, Netflix is spending as much money on content as NBC is. And if we look just to the right there, with Warner Media, that's HBO, and Netflix is clearly outspending all of Warner Media, one part of which is HBO. So these are some of the salaries and deals that Netflix has made with current talent. So Ryan Murphy, who did American Horror Story and Glee, they gave him $300 million contract over 5 years. The Game of Thrones people got $200 million, Shonda Rhimes $150 million. So you can see that they're spending quite a lot of money. And if we just look from a business perspective, they have revenues last year of $28 billion, and they have debt of $15.5 billion. So that's quite a large debt ratio there. But this slide, I think, is really what represents the ultimate success of Netflix. And the major point that I wanted to make is that I'll just talk through this slide. I know it's hard to read. So all you have to do is pay attention. At first, I'll talk about the top half of the slide, and then I'll talk about the bottom half. So what I've done here is I've put together a stylized customer lifetime valuation model. Looking back when Netflix decided to go into original programming, and the hope there was that it would reduce churn. Okay, so at the top, I'm looking at the time that they were going to original programming, they had about 20 million subscribers, and I'm growing that at 10% or so a year. The churn rate, which is line 3, is going down each period, and that's reflecting the success of their original content. Okay, so if they have shows that are popular, then you can see in the bottom line where their profits go from 1 billion to 1.4 billion over the course of a few years. That is to be expected if you have original content that is really being popular in the market. What we didn't expect, I don't think that even Netflix expected to be so successful at this model, is really in the bottom part, where if we count in the customer lifetime valuation model that not only is original programming reducing churn, but it's also accelerating growth as opposed to just kind of their typical growth, then we see in the bottom that the customer lifetime valuation models really explode. So using the same assumptions on churn, but more aggressive assumptions on growth rates, you see that Netflix goes from 1 billion, where they started in the example above, to 2.4 billion. So the idea here is that Netflix takes money, invests in original programming. That original programming brings back more money in terms of subscriber growth and less churn. They take that extra money, they put it back into original programming, which leads to less churn and more subscriber growth. And so they are on this kind of virtuous cycle that the other people do not benefit from. So this is, at one point in time, we were talking about, or Netflix even was talking about, that they wanted to become HBO before HBO became Netflix. And I think now Netflix is just its own monster. It's really something that nobody could have imagined, at least on our side, that a new entrant into Hollywood could be so successful with original programming. So let's go to traditional broadcast and cable, and how is this success of Netflix affecting them? Well, the revenues for any new, so this, imagine that you're a studio that's launching a new television program. The DVD market has all but disappeared. Syndication, which used to be the big pot of gold for the content producers in television has gone down dramatically. So those big syndication contracts are really only for special programs like Friends or Seinfeld. Most of the other television shows that would have been successful in syndication are not getting those deals. And the reason is that the foreign market, of course, they want original programming too. And so original programming is taking forth everywhere. So this is really changing the profitability of the way that traditional studios look at the business model. So because of this original programming boom, costs are way up. So at one point in time, even just 5-7 years ago, the average television show on American TV would have cost about $1 to $2 million for 1 hour of drama, and now the average broadcast show is $5 million. High-end shows like The Crown, Game of Thrones are $15 million per episode, right? And if we do a 10-episode season, that's a $150 million investment, so that's as much as any tentpole movie. And Amazon just announced that for the Lord of the Rings television series, which they're going to launch very soon, that they're spending $500 million for the first season. So the amount of money being spent is just enormous. So this slide just looks at the traditional media companies and the percentage of their profits that is due to their cable TV divisions. Okay, so for Disney, this would be Disney Channel, ESPN, so on and so forth. So you can see here that for Fox, the cable TV revenues are more than 80%, or the profits are more than 80%. Even for a huge company like Disney, it's still at 30%. So at one point in time, ESPN alone was thought to account for 20 to 25% of Disney Corp's earnings. So if the pay TV model is broken, it's in part because sports are adding huge costs to the cable bills. So again, this is kind of a US-centric model, but I think this is happening across the globe, where sports is really the only piece of content that people are going to watch live. And you can see here that out of a $100 cable bill, about 30% of it is just in sports. So if you don't want sports, then you're spending about $25 to $30 on programming that you don't care for. So here in LA, we have the Los Angeles Lakers, Los Angeles Dodgers. Those are each adding $5 to $10 per subscriber to our cable bills, and the costs are just leading to quicker unbundling. So a number of households in the US that are subscribing to traditional cable and satellite has dwindled. A lot of experts talk about 50 million households is where the model breaks. So we're at 70 million households today, and it's continuing to decrease. So unfortunately for the traditional studios, what this means is that if ESPN for Disney, let's say, is 20 to 25% of the corporate earnings, every time there is a downturn in the number of subscribers of ESPN, that's really costing me quite greatly. So they had launched ESPN Plus as their digital offering, but ESPN Plus right now is a complement. It doesn't have all of the programming that's on ESPN. So if you look at the number of subscribers that the company is losing in cable, and then see at how fast their app is growing, it was not growing quickly enough. So this was just in 2019. If we look today, ESPN is now bundled with Hulu and Disney Plus, so that bundle package is quite attractive, and so they're able to grow ESPN Plus a little bit faster than what we had thought. But just in my last closing comment here, just in terms of the ecosystem, so the cable TV ecosystem being down 10 million subscribers, that's roughly about $120 million in revenue per month that Disney Corp is losing. Okay, not including what they're losing in advertising. So if we look at the growth of ESPN Plus, that's not replacing the amount that they're losing in the cable, traditional cable ecosystem. Okay, so Netflix is really changing all of these business models, and competition has come in. So the traditional companies are adjusting, but the pay TV model was very, very successful for the traditional players, and now we'll have to see where the landscape goes. So thank you, Laredo. Thank you, everybody.